Hey everybody, Chapter 10, Lesson 1, and as we start Chapter 10, we're looking at two things throughout the course of this chapter is how can our government help fix the economy of the Great Depression? Remember that Hoover tried, but that he didn't do enough, and our government still needed to kind of tackle the economy and maybe get it better. And the second question is, should the government actually fix our economy? I mean, is our government responsible for our well-being? Should our government actually get involved in this kind of thing? Remember that Hoover believed in laissez-faire economics. He thought that the government should not intervene. He thought that when the government did intervene, you can see that big rock right here, that it was holding the economy, this guy right here, back, that it would be harder for our economy to get moving if the government intervened, so that it shouldn't be helping its people too much. So we have these two questions that we're going to be debating, and the guy that we're going to take a look at as we kind of begin to discuss this debate is this guy right here, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's extraordinarily well off, comes from a very wealthy family. They were bootleggers. Very competitive guy, very, very competitive. He always liked to be the number one, and he liked to have the power. He was very energetic. He did well around people. He was a senator from New York State. He was a vice presidential candidate in 1920, but then he had been stricken with polio, which was a disease that was crippling, and many Americans suffered it back in the 1920s and 1930s. It was a paralyzing disease. He lost the use of his legs. In fact, you can see him right here in this image in a wheelchair because he was no longer able to walk. But Americans listened to FDR's message, and FDR said that the government will help you, that we will make changes, that we will, if you vote for me, for FDR, a Democrat, the government will do more, can do more to help you, the average American, survive the Great Depression. And because Hoover was seen as not having done anything, it was a message that really resonated with people, so that when the election of 1932 happened, Roosevelt crushed Hoover. Every state that you see on the map right down here, every state that you see on this map in blue voted for Roosevelt. Every state that you see in red voted for Hoover, including the state with the really bad roads and bridges, Pennsylvania. So Roosevelt's message that the government needs to do something, that the government needs to intervene, that message is really well received by the American people. And they think to themselves that, yeah, we really do need to do something. The government really needs to do something to help us in this Great Depression. So once Roosevelt wins, there are a number of months between when the election occurs and when Roosevelt takes power. So if you don't know this, elections for president happen in November. And Roosevelt doesn't start actually taking power until January. So there's a few months in between. So what we have to see here is that in the time between November and January, people are afraid. They're worried because unemployment is still going up. People are afraid. They're worried that if FDR starts spending lots of money or printing lots of money and putting it into the economy, that the value of the dollar will fall. So people go on bank runs in the winter of 1932, afraid that things will get worse, not better, as 1932 goes on. So you even see states declaring forced bank holidays to stop these bank runs, where states are saying we're going to close these banks for a number of days to prevent bank runs. You can't get your money out because we don't want the economy to collapse even more. Roosevelt realizes this. He says, look, everybody, we can't be afraid. We have to confront this situation without fear. We need to recognize that things will get better. He gives an inaugural speech, an inaugural address, first speech as president. And this little quote right down here at the bottom of the slide is what he says, that it's time to speak the truth frankly and boldly, that Someone, and in this case, the president, is going to tell you the way it needs to be. We can't shrink from facing the conditions in our country. We have to accept the fact that so many people are jobless, that the banks are really struggling. And let me assert my firm belief, so let me tell you what I really think. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. It's gonna get better. And Roosevelt gives this message, and the people listen. Roosevelt takes office, the banks reopen, and things get better. So FDR looks for ways in these first days in office to help people through their fear. He wants to show them that his government is doing something. First thing he does, he brings in a bunch of different advisors that disagree with each other so that he can hear everybody's point of view. He wants to maybe consider doing what Teddy Roosevelt did, work with business to regulate the economy where needed. Maybe he wants to go full progressive and break up all these big businesses. Maybe he should go socialist. Should government even run the economy? He listens to all these advisors to get the best ideas, to show people that he's willing to listen and make the best decisions he can for the people. And in the first 100 days of his office, between March 9th and June 16th, which we now call the 100 days of any president's first term, the first 100 days of their time in office, Roosevelt submits 15 proposals to Congress. He says, Congress, we should do these 15 really big things in order to get our economy moving again, in order to help people confront their fear, to get this country back on its feet. And he calls these 15 acts the first New Deal. And he says these 15 acts will create a new deal for the American people. So the rest of this video will take a look at some of those things in that first New Deal. For example, we know that people were worried about the banks and the banking system. So Roosevelt wants to restore confidence in that banking system, which you can see right there beneath me in red. So Roosevelt, when he takes office, says, well, how can I do this? All right, I got a couple things I can do. I can call all the radio programs together, and you can see a picture of Roosevelt right here next to me with all the radio companies, CBS, NBC. Those are radio companies then, they're TV companies now. And he says, all right, I'm going to give a radio address to the American people. I'm going to call it my fireside chat. And in fact, I'm going to do this every week. And I'm going to tell people what I'm going to do. So he does this within his first week, and 60 out of 122 million Americans are listening. That's half of America are listening to him talk right after he's inaugurated. And he tells them that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress. And people listen to Roosevelt. They believe him. And they deposit their money back in the banks. The second thing he does with this first New Deal is something called the Glass-Steagall Act. And what the Glass-Steagall Act does is it says, okay, bank, and I'm drawing a bank here over to my right. This is a bank. And he says, you have to split in half. You have to have half of your bank that deals with the stock market. That's what we call, and I'm going to circle it down here in red, investment banking. Half of your bank deals with investment banking, and the other half, that is going to deal with regular banking, commercial banking, the kind of banking that you and I use, savings and checking. And those two sides of the bank can't mix together. In other words, I can't use money from my commercial banking to invest in stocks. And I can't use money from my investment banking from my stocks to repay my commercial. They have to stay separate. And we're going to have this thing over here called the FDIC in order to protect people and their money. And if you go to the banks, and I'm circling it right now, you still see these FDIC signs that say that your money that you have here in this commercial part of the bank is protected. And people respond. People like the fact that Roosevelt is doing these things to protect our economy. So one of the things that Roosevelt's dealing with that we had seen people worried about are banks and money. But what about all those people who were homeless? Remember this? We had so many people that were losing their homes and farms. Like if you look at this map of Philadelphia, any area of Philadelphia that's in red, those are people in danger of losing their homes. So what's Roosevelt going to do to help them? What he's going to do is help people with their mortgages. He's going to create something called the Home Owners Loan Corporation. What that's going to do is really let people have a longer period of time with a lower interest rate to repay their loan if you're unemployed. So that anyone that would live in these areas of big cities that are red, this is New York on the slide right now, you'll have a longer time to repay your loan if you're unemployed, and you'll do it at a lower rate. More people can keep their homes. Pretty good. What about those farms? Creates the Farm Credit Administration. It does the same exact thing for farmers that homeowners did for regular people. If you're in trouble as a farmer, you're going to have a longer time to repay your loan at a lower interest rate. And we know the problem with farmers is that the price of food was too low. So what are we going to do? We're going to say, okay, farmers, don't spend any money producing more food that people won't buy. Instead, we'll make the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, and we'll pay you to not produce. This will lower the supply and lead to higher prices. This is something that should work. Of course, there are unexplained things that happen too, that we'll talk about in class tomorrow, but it does generally help. Last thing that he says is, what about people who need these jobs? What can we do? Well, he says that let's get unions. Unions can help end this depression by getting people paid higher wages. If we have higher wages, people will spend more money. We'll get the economy working again. This is the way we can do it. So, New Deal and Roosevelt work with unions to get people more money, higher wages. So we can see Roosevelt in this first 100 days really working hard to combat a number of these things. People that are homeless, with the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, with the Farm Credit Administration, Homeowners Loan Corporation, working for people that are unemployed, with unions, for example, to get people back to work. Other things that he'll do to help people who are unemployed is create a series of programs to put people back to work, get money in their pockets, like this one right here, the Civilian Conservation Corps. He's going to say to people, all right, you're unemployed, you're between 18 and 25, here's what we're going to do. We're going to recruit you and put you into an army-like corps. You can see the rows of tents right here that I have in this picture that I just blew up. We're going to give you a job repairing the outdoors. We're going to put you to work under the Forestry Service. We've got this huge dust bowl going on in America. We have land that really needs to be repaired. You're going to go and do it. We're going to pay you, and you are going to use that money, and it's going to go back home, and people are going to spend it. You come to us, you don't know how to read, we're going to teach you how to read. You come to us, you don't have skills, we're going to give you the skills you need. We're going to put 3 million Americans back to work with this program. What about people that are starving right now, can't get into the Civilian Conservation Corps? We're going to have the Federal Emergency Relief Agency, circle it right now in orange. These people will get money or relief money for people that are unemployed to kind of bridge the gap until you can get a job. Additionally, we're going to keep doing, says Roosevelt, what Hoover had been doing, public works. We're going to put people to work building all of these areas of things like bridges, hospitals, roads, etc., and we're not going to discriminate against African Americans. We're going to put them to work too. And we're going to do it in places that need it the most, like the South, because the South needs more public works than any place else at this time. So we'll have specific organizations like the TVA to help provide benefits to the South. Is it successful? Yes, for the most part. It does not bring back prosperity fully. In other words, people are still suffering. But it does show that banks are reopened, people get their homes and farms, and more people are working. So it does give some hope that things can get better between 1932 and 1934, 35, and 36. There is debate over how much the government should get involved, but overall, it is making positive change. And we'll talk more about this in class.